Why was she still there when everyone else had gone? The range was empty. The echo of gunfire had faded long ago, replaced by the soft whisper of wind brushing against spent shell casings scattered across the dirt. The sun had bled into the horizon, leaving behind streaks of gold and crimson, the kind of colors that made the world look too peaceful for a place built to train for war. Lieutenant Sarah Hale adjusted her stance, the butt of her rifle pressed firm against her shoulder. Her breathing was measured, shallow, rhythmic. Her right finger rested gently on the trigger, not pressing, not hesitating, just waiting for that perfect stillness between two heartbeats. Crack! The rifle's report broke the silence, a sharp echo that rolled through the valley like thunder that didn't belong to a storm. The bullet tore through the target cleanly, dead center. She blinked once, steady, and chambered another round. She wasn't supposed to be here this late. The others had packed up hours ago, laughing, exhausted, slapping each other on the back as they headed for the mess hall. They were done for the day. But not her. Sarah stayed because she wasn't chasing sleep. She was chasing something else, something harder to define. She fired again. Then again. Each shot was precise, surgical. Every breath, every movement controlled. Yet behind that precision there was something else, a quiet kind of desperation. Her instructors used to tell her she was too serious, that she didn't know how to relax, but Sarah knew something they didn't. She wasn't training to be good. She was training so she could never fail. Because failure, in her mind, wasn't a bad score on a range. It was the difference between someone coming home and someone not. The rifle's barrel glowed faintly with heat. Sweat beaded along her temple, trickled down her jawline, and fell silently onto the dirt below. She reached for another magazine, reloaded, and exhaled. It wasn't about the target anymore. It hadn't been for a long time. This was ritual, a private battle she fought against her own limits. She remembered her father's voice, deep and tired from years in the service. Discipline isn't built when someone's watching, Sarah. It's built when you're alone, when it would be easier to stop. And she had never forgotten that. Not when the days were long, not when the nights were cold. The crack of another shot snapped through the dusk, scattering a flock of birds from the trees beyond the berm. Her hand trembled slightly as she ejected the empty magazine and knelt to gather the spent brass. Her knees ached, her shoulders burned, but her eyes stayed locked on the target's downrange, 5 paper silhouettes riddled with perfect clusters. She could stop, but she didn't. Because perfection wasn't a goal. It was a debt she paid to those who would one day trust her aim. She exhaled softly, set down the rifle for a moment, and leaned back against the wooden barrier. The faint smell of gunpowder and dust filled the air, clinging to her uniform, her hair, her skin. It was the smell of repetition, of quiet obsession. She didn't hear him approach. Not at first. Commander Cole moved like a shadow, steady, unhurried, each step deliberate. The kind of man who didn't need to announce himself to be felt. His presence alone shifted the air, like the calm before a storm that people didn't notice until it was right beside them. He wasn't in his dress uniform, just plain fatigues, a man stripped of symbols, of ceremony. To most, he was a legend, a Navy SEAL commander whose name traveled through camps and training grounds like a ghost story. To her, at that moment, he was just another silhouette at the edge of the range. He didn't speak, didn't interrupt. He just watched. Through the fading light, he saw her movements, the way her stance flowed like muscle memory carved over years of repetition. The way she reloaded, no wasted motion, no hesitation. The quiet fire in her eyes that didn't come from pride but from purpose. He had seen soldiers break under less. He had seen arrogance dressed as confidence. But what he saw now was different, it was rare. It was humility that worked harder than talent ever could. Sarah didn't notice him at first. She was deep inside her rhythm, that narrow space where thought disappears and instinct takes over. Another shot, then another. The rhythm of solitude. When she finally did sense him, she froze not from fear but from instinct. Her body straightened, her pulse spiked. She turned slowly, squinting into the dimming light until his outline became clear. Her throat went dry. "Sir." Her voice was formal, quiet. She reached for her weapon automatically, checking the chamber, safety engaged. She was already rehearsing an explanation in her mind. Why she was here. Why she hadn't signed out. Why she couldn't seem to stop. But he didn't ask. The commander stepped closer, boots crunching softly against the dirt. His expression was unreadable, his jaw set, eyes calm, the kind of calm forged in chaos, not born with it. Sarah opened her mouth again, unsure what to say. But then he did something that made every word die in her throat. He stopped and raised his hand. The salute was crisp, flawless and slow, deliberate in every motion. It carried no ceremony, no audience, no stage lights or cameras. Just the weight of respect, raw, personal, silent. Sarah's breath caught. The world seemed to narrow to that single gesture. She knew what a salute meant. She had performed it countless times, to flags, to officers, to tradition itself. But this was different. This was not the salute of rank. It was the salute of acknowledgement. From a man who owed her nothing, expected nothing, yet saw everything. For a moment she couldn't move. Her hand trembled as she slowly mirrored the gesture, her fingers brushing her temple, her eyes locked on his. There was no sound, no wind, just that silent exchange between two soldiers who understood that words often cheapen what silence can hold. When he lowered his hand, his gaze lingered for a second longer. Then, without speaking, he turned and walked away, his steps slow, steady, fading into the dusk. She stood there long after he disappeared from view. Her chest felt tight, her heart heavy but alive. No one had seen it. No one would believe it if she told them. And maybe that was the point. She knelt, gathered the last few casings, and looked down the range again. The target swayed gently in the evening breeze, the bullet holes glowing faintly in the last rays of sun. For the first time in a long while, she smiled, not out of pride but out of peace. Because that moment, that silent salute, it wasn't about approval. It was about recognition. Someone had seen her, truly seen her. And that meant everything. That night when she finally walked back to her quarters, she didn't look at the time. She didn't check her score sheets or her performance stats. She simply placed her rifle back into its case and sat on the edge of her bunk, staring at her hands, calloused, steady, trembling slightly at the memory. She whispered softly to herself, "You keep going, even when no one's watching." And from that night on, something inside her changed. Not loud, not visible, just deeper. Every shot she fired afterward carried a quiet echo of that salute, a reminder that discipline, respect, and worth were not given. They were earned, alone in the stillness. Because sometimes, dignity doesn't need to speak. It simply acts. She woke before dawn. Not because she had to, but because sleep never stayed long anymore. The barracks were silent, rows of empty bunks catching the soft blue light of early morning. The hum of the base generator filled the stillness, steady as a heartbeat. Sarah sat on the edge of her bed, boots unlaced, eyes distant. For a moment, she just listened. The sound of the world before the world woke up. The kind of silence that made her feel both small and infinite at once. She rubbed her palms together, felt the roughness of calluses that never quite healed. Her body was tired, but her mind was alive, replaying the image of that salute again and again. It had been 2 days. And still it lingered. Not like a compliment. More like a weight. She'd spent her career blending into the background, following rules, meeting standards, But that single gesture from Commander Cole had cracked something open, a realization she didn't know how to process. Someone saw her, and that scared her more than she expected. At 500, the alarm bell sounded. The base came alive. Boots struck the ground, shouts echoed down the corridors, the smell of instant coffee and gun oil filled the air. Sarah was already geared up by the time others stumbled into the light. "Morning, Hale," Sergeant Vega called, yawning as she strapped on her vest. "You're up early, again." Sarah smiled faintly. "Couldn't sleep." "Couldn't or would," Vega teased, tightening her gloves. "You've got that look again, like the range ghosts won't let you rest." Sarah didn't answer. She didn't know how to explain it. That strange pull, that need to earn the silence around her. By the time the platoon assembled for morning drills, the sun had climbed over the ridges, spilling gold across the tarmac. Dust rose beneath their boots as they jogged, rifles in sync, voices calling cadence. To the others, it was routine. To Sarah, it was grounding. Every step was rhythm, every breath an anchor. Still, beneath the surface of her composure, a question gnawed quietly. Why had he saluted her? She tried to tell herself it was nothing, just respect between soldiers, but she knew better. A man like Commander Cole didn't waste gestures. Everything he did meant something. And that made it heavier somehow. By mid-morning, drills had shifted to the outdoor range for squad accuracy evaluations. The instructors moved between lanes, barking corrections, marking scores. The air buzzed with competition. Sarah's lane was quiet, her movements efficient, almost surgical. The rifle felt like an extension of her heartbeat, steady, unwavering. Lieutenant Hale, one of the evaluators, muttered as he glanced at her target sheet. "You're consistent, too consistent. Ever think of showing off a little? Give the others something to chase." She gave a polite half-smile. "Showing off isn't part of the job description, sir." The man chuckled and moved on, but his words stayed behind like an echo. Too consistent, as if perfection was boring. She finished her last round, her weapon, and started packing up. Her teammates joked nearby, light-hearted, loud, normal. Sarah them sometimes. How easily they could laugh, how easily they could forget the things they'd seen. She couldn't. She'd never learned how. When she was 17, her brother had enlisted before her, Marine Corps. He was the kind of man who carried sunshine wherever he went, fearless, always smiling, always finding reasons to believe. He never came home. They said it was quick, they said it was painless. But letters didn't sound that way when the ink bled through the paper from shaking hands. That was the day Sarah stopped chasing dreams and started chasing precision. Because precision was the only thing that didn't lie. And now, standing on that same range years later, she realized that every bullet she fired wasn't just practice, it was a promise. To him, to herself. "Lieutenant Hale," a voice called from behind. She turned sharply, not out of surprise but habit. And there he was again. Commander Cole. The sunlight cut across his features, highlighting the hard lines of his face, the kind carved by time, sand, and silence. His eyes, sharp but unreadable, met hers. For a heartbeat, she felt that same flicker in her chest she'd felt the night he saluted her. That quiet electricity of being noticed. "Sir," she said, straightening instinctively. He nodded once, his tone calm, almost conversational. "You were on this range late the other night." "Yes, sir." "You always train after hours." "Yes, sir." "Why?" Her mouth opened, then closed. She hadn't expected that question. "Why?" A dozen answers flashed in her mind. Discipline, routine, respect, control, but none of them were the truth. "I don't like leaving things unfinished," she said finally, quietly. He studied her face for a moment. "And what's unfinished?" She hesitated. "Me, sir." Something flickered in his eyes, maybe understanding, maybe respect. She couldn't tell. He nodded again, slow, thoughtful. Then, after a pause, "Keep at it, but don't mistake punishment for discipline. There's a line." Her brow furrowed. "Sir." "Perfection is an illusion," he said simply. "Don't let it break you trying to reach it." Before she could respond, he turned and walked away, leaving her standing there with her rifle slung over her shoulder and her thoughts spinning like shrapnel. The rest of the day passed in motion, briefings, gear checks, tactical scenarios, but her mind wasn't on any of it. It was on that conversation. On the way he'd said it. Perfection is an illusion. She repeated it in her head, but it didn't sit right. She didn't want to believe it, because if perfection wasn't real, then what was she chasing all this time? That night back in her quarters, she sat cross-legged on the floor, disassembling her rifle piece by piece. Not for maintenance, for meditation. The sound of metal on metal, the steady rhythm of cleaning, the smell of oil, it was her way of thinking without words. The radio crackled softly in the background, a news briefing about unrest overseas, a reminder that peace was never permanent. Her hands paused. Her reflection in the gunmetal looked back at her, tired eyes, determined jaw, a face she hardly recognized anymore. She thought of the commander again, his voice, his salute, his words. Why had he come to the range that night? Why her? Something told her it wasn't random. Days passed, then a week. Training intensified. The platoon was told to prepare for a joint operations exercise, one that would simulate real combat coordination with Navy SEAL teams. It was supposed to be standard, but rumors spread fast. Cole overseeing it himself, Vega said, tossing a ration bar onto Sarah's bunk. "Guess we're gonna get yelled at by the best." Sarah froze mid-motion. "Commander Cole." "Yeah, word is. He handpicked a few officers to evaluate up close." Sarah's chest tightened. She didn't say anything, but her pulse quickened. She didn't know whether to be nervous or grateful or both. That night she couldn't sleep again. She lay in the dark, listening to the distant sound of helicopters fading into the horizon. What if he was testing her? What if that salute wasn't recognition, but expectation? The thought made her stomach turn. By dawn, the teams assembled at the forward field. Dust rose as vehicles lined the perimeter, gear piled high, radios buzzing. The simulation zone stretched for miles, mock villages, ridges, terrain built to mimic the chaos of real operations. Commander Cole's voice carried over the comms briefing, calm, precise, efficient. The kind of voice that didn't need to raise volume to demand attention. "Remember, this isn't about speed," he said. "It's about judgment. The mission, only as good as the discipline behind it, and discipline doesn't need applause." Sarah's eyes flicked up at that last line. She didn't think anyone else noticed, but she did. Their teams broke off, spread into the mock terrain. Sarah's squad was assigned Overwatch support, a position she knew well, the kind that demanded patience, not noise. Hours passed. The heat built. The air shimmered above the dirt. Her hands stayed steady on the scope, tracking movement, calculating distance, anticipating decisions before they happened. Through the radio, she heard the chatter of other teams, chaos, mistakes, recoveries. But her squad moved smooth, silent. Then, mid-operation, her comm unit crackled. "Lieutenant Hale, this is Command 1." The voice was his. She swallowed hard. "Copy, Command 1. Shift Overwatch to Grid 6. I want eyes on the northern approach." "Yes, sir." She adjusted her scope, repositioned her rifle, heart hammering. The sound of footsteps came from behind her. It was him again. No longer a distant shadow or a passing salute. This time he was there, standing behind her, watching over her shoulder as she worked. She didn't look back, didn't need to. She could feel his presence, heavy, grounding. Minutes passed. The exercise continued. Commands echoed. But Sarah heard only her breath, her heartbeat, the soft hum of discipline turning into instinct. When the simulated enemy appeared at the ridge line, her voice came steady through the mic. Target sighted, range 500, permission to engage. Granted, Cole said. Her finger squeezed the trigger. Crack. Then another. And another. Each shot struck true. The mock hostiles dropped in perfect succession, center mass, head, center mass. Cole's gaze never left her. He didn't speak, didn't praise. But his silence, it wasn't absence. It was approval. When the exercise ended, teams regrouped. Dust, laughter, exhaustion filled the air. But Sarah stayed quiet, wiping down her rifle, avoiding the noise. Cole passed her on the way back to base. He didn't stop. Didn't salute. Didn't even look directly at her. But as he walked past, his words came low, almost too quiet for anyone else to hear. You still think you're unfinished, Lieutenant? She froze, her lips parted, but before she could answer, he was gone. The sun dipped low again that evening, the same way it had that first night on the range. And as Sarah stood there alone once more, she realized something. He wasn't testing her aim. He was testing her understanding. And maybe, just maybe, he was teaching her how to stop chasing ghosts. The first explosion wasn't supposed to happen. It shook the dirt under her boots like the earth itself had flinched. For a split second, no one moved. Then the radio came alive, static, shouting, confusion. This is Alpha 2. We've got live detonations in Sector 9. Repeat, live detonations. Sarah's hand froze over her rifle. Her heartbeat spiked. Live detonations, but this was supposed to be a simulation. She looked toward the ridge. A column of smoke spiraled upward, black against the blinding sun. Training rounds didn't burn like that. Training rounds didn't scream. Across the field, Commander Cole was already moving, fast, precise, unshaken. His voice cut through the radio chaos like a blade. All units hold position. Confirm casualties. Confirm ordnance type. Sarah adjusted her scope, scanning the smoke. She could see figures, confused, scrambling. Someone was down. Someone wasn't getting up. Her throat tightened. This was no longer a drill. Lieutenant Hale, Cole's voice snapped through the channel, calm but commanding. You're closest to Sector 9. Move your team, secure the perimeter and report. Yes, sir. Her hands didn't hesitate, but her pulse did. As her squad sprinted forward, weapons up, Sarah's mind was already piecing together what went wrong. A storage error, sabotage, or something worse. The air stung with the smell of burnt fuel and cordite. The mock village ahead was half collapsed, training dummies scattered like broken silhouettes. But this wasn't fake anymore. They found the first casualty near a vehicle wreck. Burns, shrapnel, real. Sarah knelt beside him, gloves pressed to his chest. His breathing was shallow. Stay with me, she whispered, though he couldn't hear her through the ringing in his own ears. Lieutenant, Vega's voice cut through the noise, we've got more north side. Sarah turned, adrenaline surging. Get him stabilized, I'll clear the front. She moved low, rifle sweeping left to right. Her eyes sharp, scanning for motion. Every sound was amplified, the crunch of boots, the metallic whine of the wind through twisted frames. Then a flicker, movement in the shadow between two structures. She froze, finger hovering over the trigger. Identify yourself, she called out. No response. Her instincts screamed, this wasn't right. This wasn't an accident. Cole, she whispered into her mic, we've got unknown movement in the training zone. Hold your fire, he ordered. I'm en route. Seconds later, his figure emerged through the smoke, helmet off, eyes cold as steel, stride deliberate. He didn't ask what happened. He already knew enough. Sarah gestured toward the structure. Something moved inside. Cole nodded. We clear it together. They moved as one, silent, controlled, deliberate. Years of training condensed into muscle memory. Sarah took point, Cole covered the flank. Inside, the air was thick with dust and heat. The building was half collapsed. A faint metallic click echoed somewhere above. Then she heard it, the unmistakable, chilling sound of a pin being pulled. "Grenade!" she shouted. Cole lunged, grabbing her shoulder and dragging her behind a concrete barrier as the blast ripped through the room. The shockwave hit hard, deafening, tearing through walls and lungs alike. Silence, then ringing, and the smell of smoke and metal and fear. Sarah's vision blurred. She felt blood trickle from her ear. Cole was already up, scanning, shouting commands she could barely hear through the ringing. "Stay with me, Lieutenant." She nodded, forcing herself upright, rifle up again. Whoever had planted that grenade wasn't just reckless. They knew the base layout. They knew the schedule. This wasn't a random explosion. It was a message. By the time reinforcements arrived, Cole had already called in a full lockdown. Medics rushed the wounded away, vehicles roared through the dust. And Sarah, she stood in the chaos, hands shaking just enough to betray how close it had been. "Lieutenant Hale." She turned, Cole's expression was carved from stone. "You all right?" "Yes, sir." "You sure?" Her jaw tightened. "I'm fine." He studied her face for a moment, reading the truth behind the lie, then gave a small nod. "You did good, you kept control." Control, the word hit deeper than it should have. He started to walk away, then stopped, half turned back toward her. "This wasn't your fault, remember that." And then he was gone, his radio crackling orders before his silhouette disappeared into the smoke. But Sarah couldn't move, couldn't breathe right, because deep down something was unraveling. That grenade, those live rounds, they weren't supposed to exist on a training field. Someone had crossed a line. And part of her wondered if she'd seen this coming. The way Cole had been watching, the way he'd spoken lately, perfection is an illusion. Maybe he knew something. Maybe that salute was more than respect. Maybe it was preparation. That night the base felt different. Too quiet, too tense. Sarah sat alone in the mess hall, the overhead lights dimmed to a dull amber glow. A cup of untouched coffee sat cooling in her hands. The hum of the vending machine was the only sound. She replayed the blast again and again in her mind. The seconds before it, the sound of that click, the way Cole moved without hesitation. He hadn't even flinched. What was he expecting? Her hands trembled slightly. She steadied them on the table, exhaling slow. Across the hall, Cole entered. Alone, no entourage, no ceremony, just calm, quiet gravity that made the air feel heavier. He walked straight to her table and sat down opposite her. No words at first, just the shared silence of people who'd both heard too many explosions to count. Then softly, "You held your ground today." Sarah looked up. "That wasn't a drill, sir." "No, it was." "Then what was it?" He didn't answer right away. His jaw clenched, eyes darkening as he weighed his words. "Sometimes," he said finally, "training reveals more than we planned for. Sometimes it reveals who's ready for the real thing." "Are you saying someone did that on purpose?" He looked at her. "I'm saying not everyone on this base belongs here." The weight of his tone settled like concrete between them. She swallowed hard. "Then why tell me?" "Because you saw what others didn't. You stayed calm when things went wrong. That's what matters." "But sir—" "Lieutenant," he interrupted gently, leaning forward, "you train like you fight, and you fight like you think. What I saw out there, your thinking saved lives." His words hit harder than any compliment she'd ever been given. Not because they flattered her, but because they sounded like trust. For the first time, she didn't feel like a shadow. She felt seen for something beyond her aim. But still, questions lingered. Who had set the explosives? And why did Cole seem to expect it? He stood, pushing his chair back quietly. "You're off duty for the night. Rest, that's an order." She nodded, but she knew she wouldn't. When he left, she stared at the reflection of her face in the dark window, ghostly, pale, lit by the faint glow of emergency lights outside. For years, she had lived in the rhythm of precision and silence. Now, something louder was rising beneath the surface: fear, curiosity, purpose. If someone inside the base was willing to turn a drill into a battlefield, then this wasn't just training anymore. This was betrayal. And Sarah Hale didn't know it yet, but the coming days would test everything she'd built her life around. Her control, her discipline, her silence. The next morning, briefing orders came early: restricted clearance. Only select personnel were called in. Sarah's name was among them. When she entered the command tent, the air was thick with tension. Maps spread across the table, screens showing satellite feeds. Cole stood at the center, arms crossed, eyes sharp. He looked up as she entered. "Lieutenant Hale," he said, "glad you're here." There were others, officers, tech specialists, field analysts, but his eyes held on hers just long enough for her to feel the weight of it. "Yesterday's incident," he began, "was not random. We've confirmed traces of unauthorized live ordnance and a breach in the supply line. Someone's using our exercises as cover to move something through base storage." Murmurs spread. Cole continued. "Effective immediately, this facility is on internal lockdown. Select teams will conduct verification drills under real conditions. Hale, you're with me." Her pulse skipped. "With you, sir." "Yes." He didn't explain further, didn't need to. The look in his eyes said enough. He trusted her aim and her silence. As the briefing ended, the others dispersed, whispering theories and nerves. Sarah stayed back, her eyes fixed on the mission board. Cole approached quietly. "You still think perfection's the goal?" She turned to face him. "No, sir." "What is it then?" She hesitated, then said softly, "Control when everything's falling apart." A faint smirk touched his lips. "Good, you'll need it." He handed her a sealed file, classified. "Read this, memorize it, then burn it." When she took it, her hands didn't shake. Not this time. Because she understood now. That salute weeks ago wasn't just acknowledgement. It was recruitment. He'd been watching her long before she ever noticed. And now she was stepping into something real. That night, Sarah stood alone again. The range was empty, wind sweeping through the fields, carrying the scent of dust and memory. She loaded her rifle and took aim, the same stance, the same silence. But something had changed. This time, she wasn't training to be seen. She was training to survive what was coming. And in the darkness beyond the targets, she could almost hear his voice again. Low, steady, unshaken. Discipline doesn't need applause. She exhaled and pulled the trigger. The shot echoed across the night, clean and final. The rain came without warning that night, a soft, steady drizzle that turned the air thick and heavy with the scent of earth and oil. Floodlights flickered across the perimeter of the base, cutting through the fog like tired sentinels. Lieutenant Sarah Hale moved through the corridors in silence, the sealed folder pressed against her chest. The weight of it wasn't measured in paper. It was measured in consequence. Cole's words echoed quietly in her mind. "Read it, memorize it, burn it." She entered the briefing room, closed the door, and switched on the low desk light. The glow caught the moisture in her hair, the faint tremor in her fingers. The folder opened with a quiet crackle. Inside, names, coordinates, coded transfer logs, supply routes rerouted through training shipments, unauthorized crates marked as simulation gear but flagged with live ordnance. It wasn't an accident. It was infiltration. Someone had been using the base's training exercises as cover to move weapons, real ones, through military supply channels. Someone inside had clearance high enough to keep it invisible. She scanned the documents, each detail burning into memory. And then she froze. A name. Captain Vega. Her closest ally. The one who'd laughed with her on morning drills, shared coffee during watch, who called her range ghost. Sarah's throat went dry. The file didn't say he was guilty, but his authorization code appeared on every single transfer form. She stared at the page until her vision blurred. It couldn't be right. Vega wasn't careless. He wasn't corrupt. He was her friend. A knock broke the silence. Sarah's heart jumped. She closed the file instantly, her pulse racing. The door opened. Commander Cole stepped in, rain dripping from his shoulders. His expression was unreadable. "You read it?" "Yes, sir." "And—" She hesitated. "It's someone on the logistics team, high clearance, could be a mistake in the routing system." "It's not a mistake," he said, his tone firm but calm. "We've been tracking this for months. Whoever's doing it knows how to stay clean." She nodded slowly. "So what's our move?" He studied her face for a moment, then spoke softly. "Our move, Lieutenant, is silence." She blinked. "Sir." "Until we have proof, no one can know we're investigating. The moment word spreads, whoever's behind this will vanish. You understand?" She nodded, though something inside her twisted. "Good," he said. "You and I are going to verify one of the shipment logs tonight. Warehouse C12. After that, we'll decide." He turned to leave, but she stopped him with a quiet voice. "Sir, Vega's name is on those forms." Cole paused, then faced her again. "I know." Her stomach dropped. "Then why me? Why tell me this if he's—" "Because you believe in him," Cole interrupted. "That makes you dangerous to him if he's guilty, and invaluable if he's not." The room went still. The only sound was the hum of the fluorescent light. Cole stepped closer, his voice low. "When I saluted you, Lieutenant, it wasn't for your aim. It was for your integrity. Don't lose it now." He left before she could respond, the door closing softly behind him. Sarah stood there for a long time, staring at the dark window, at her own reflection, split by streaks of rain. She didn't know what hurt more, the thought of Vega being a traitor, or the thought that Cole might already believe he was. They reached the warehouse after midnight. The rain had turned to a fine mist, the kind that clung to every surface. The facility was quiet, its wide metal doors sealed, the security lights casting pale cones across the ground. Cole swiped his access card. The door beeped, then unlocked with a low hiss. Inside, rows of crates stretched into the shadows, identical, unmarked, ordinary. The smell of diesel and wet concrete filled the air. Cole moved first, flashlight sweeping across serial numbers. Sarah followed, keeping her voice low. "These were supposed to be non-lethal training rounds," she said. "Check the seals," he replied. She crouched, prying one open. Inside, ammunition, heavy, real, not blanks. She looked up at him. "Sir, this is live ordnance. Someone been moving the real thing." He nodded grimly. "And not just here. Every base we've cross-checked in the last 6 months has the same pattern." She exhaled slowly, the weight of the discovery sinking in. "Then Vega." "Could be a pawn," Cole said. "Could be more, we'll find out." They continued deeper into the warehouse. The sound of their boots echoed off the walls, steady, deliberate. Then suddenly, something clattered in the distance. Sarah froze, hand instinctively moving to her sidearm. Cole raised a fist, signal to hold. The sound came again. A faint metallic slide. Someone was here. Cole motioned silently. He'd circle left, she'd cover right. Sarah moved through the aisles, her steps quiet as breath. Her flashlight beam cut through the dark. A shadow flickered past the far corner. "Freeze," she barked. A figure darted out, male, uniformed, mask half pulled. He ran. Cole moved faster than thought, intercepting him near the exit, slamming him against a crate. The flashlight hit the ground and spun in a dizzy beam across the floor. The man struggled. "You don't understand." Cole's voice was cold. "Talk." "It's not what you think," the man gasped. "I was ordered." "By who?" Sarah demanded. He hesitated. That moment of silence was his mistake. Cole's hand pressed harder against his shoulder. "Name," Cole repeated. The man's voice cracked. "Vega, Captain Vega," he said, to move the crates before inspection. Sarah's breath caught. Cole's expression didn't change, but his jaw tightened. "And you did it without question." "He's my superior. I thought it was protocol." "Get him restrained," Cole said sharply. Sarah moved, pulling zip ties from her vest, hands steady even as her stomach twisted. The man didn't resist further. Once he was secure, Cole motioned her toward the exit. "We take this upstairs, quietly." They stepped back into the cold rain. The wind had picked up, carrying the low growl of distant thunder. Sarah's mind was spinning. Vega, her friend, the one who'd always said she took things too seriously, the one who'd covered her on field rotations. Could he really be involved? "Sir," she finally said as they reached the vehicles, "what if he's being set up?" Cole looked at her for a long moment, then said quietly, "Then we find who's setting him up." She wanted to believe him. She really did. But something in his tone, that measured calm, told her he already had a theory. And she wasn't sure she wanted to hear it. Morning came gray and heavy. The base felt suffocating. Soldiers moved quietly, eyes darting. Rumors had started to spread about the lockdown, about missing munitions, about whispers of betrayal. Sarah moved through it all like a ghost, on the outside composed, inside chaos. When she finally found Vega near the armory, he greeted her with that familiar grin. The one that used to calm her, now only made her chest tighten. "Hey, range ghost," he said. "You hear what's going around? Somebody's been playing dirty with our supply chain." Her voice came slow. "You heard from command." "Bits and pieces," he said. "Supposedly Cole's running a secret probe. Man doesn't rest." Her eyes narrowed. "And you?" He chuckled. "Me, I follow orders, that's all." The words sounded innocent, but there was something behind them, a shadow she'd never noticed before. She wanted to ask him outright, "Why is your name in those files?" But Cole's warning echoed in her mind, "Silence until we have proof." So she just nodded and walked away, every step heavier than the last. That evening, Sarah met Cole again in his office. The blinds were drawn, the air thick with the smell of rain-soaked uniforms and tension. He stood behind his desk, hands clasped behind his back. "We confirmed the serials. The crates we found were part of a larger network." She swallowed. "And Vega?" Cole's eyes met hers, steady, unreadable. "He's either the link we need, or the one pulling the strings." "I need to know which," she said quietly. "You will," Cole replied, "tonight." Her pulse quickened. "Sir." "We're running a silent trace. Vega's been accessing comms outside protocol hours. I want you on surveillance detail. Audio only, no confrontation." She nodded, forcing her voice steady. "Understood." He stepped closer, lowering his tone. "Sarah," he said, her first name softly, deliberately. "You've got good instincts, trust them, but don't let loyalty blind you." Something in her chest stilled. It wasn't just an order, it was a warning. He left the room first, his shadow long across the light. Sarah remained for a moment, hands pressed to the desk, staring at her reflection in the polished surface. She felt like she was being pulled in two directions, one toward truth, one toward trust. And she didn't know which one would break her first. That night, hidden in the dim light of the observation deck, she listened through the calm feed, static, hum, faint voices in the distance. Hours passed. Rain hit the windows in slow, rhythmic taps. Then just past 200, a voice. "Vegas." She turned the volume up slightly. "Yes, the shipment's been moved. No, they don't know. Cole's too busy playing detective. The rest's on schedule. Her pulse hammered. Then another voice, muffled, distorted. Male, not from the base. You've done your part, Captain. Tomorrow, you'll receive extraction orders. Sarah's blood ran cold. Extraction orders. She sat frozen, headphones pressed tight, her breath shallow. Vega wasn't being set up. He was setting up everyone else. The call ended. Silence again. Just the rain. She pulled the headset off, hands trembling. And for the first time since the night she met Commander Cole, she didn't feel calm. She felt rage. Not the kind that explodes. The kind that burns slow, quiet, disciplined, unstoppable. She stood, staring out the window toward the distant barracks where Vega slept, unaware. Tomorrow, the base would know the truth. And Sarah Hale would be the one to face him. Even if it broke her. The rain hadn't stopped by morning. It came down harder, steadier, as if the sky itself was holding its breath. Sarah Hale hadn't slept. She didn't even try. She spent the hours before dawn sitting on the edge of her bunk, her hands still, her mind anything but. The recording replayed in her thoughts like a wound that wouldn't close. Vega's voice, calm, deceptive. Cole's too busy playing detective. The rest's on schedule. You'll receive extraction orders. Every word was a cut. The man who had once made her laugh in the middle of endless drills. The man who had once said, "Don't forget to breathe between shots, Hale," was now the one selling out the people he trained beside. She'd seen betrayal before in war briefings, in casualty reports, in the faces of soldiers who'd trusted the wrong command. But hearing it this close, from someone she believed in, that was different. That was personal. And part of her didn't know which hurt more, that he had betrayed his uniform or that he'd betrayed her faith. When the first rays of light cut through the storm clouds, she was already moving. Uniform pressed, rifle cleaned, mind locked. By the time she reached the command office, Commander Cole was already there, standing by the map table, eyes tired but focused. He looked up when she entered, and he didn't need to ask. "You heard him," he said quietly. Sarah nodded, every word. Cole exhaled, rubbing the back of his neck. Damn it. For a moment, the room was just the two of them. The silence between two people who'd both seen too much of what betrayal costs. Sarah finally spoke. "What do we do?" Cole looked at her steady, unreadable. "We handle it quietly. No public arrest, no panic. We can't risk his contact realizing we're onto him. If they disappear, we lose everything." She stepped closer. "So what's the plan?" "You're going to meet him," he said. Sarah froze. "Meet him?" "He trusts you. That's our advantage." "You want me to lie to him?" "I want you to find the truth." Her jaw clenched. "I already did." Cole's gaze softened just slightly, enough to remind her that he wasn't just a commander. He was a man who'd had to make choices like this before. And carry them alone. "Sarah," he said quietly, "you said it yourself once, you don't leave things unfinished." The words hit like a trigger pulled slow. She nodded once, the decision already written in her eyes. "Then let's finish this." Vega was in the motor yard, leaning against a Humvee, rain dripping from his jacket. He looked calm, too calm. "Morning range ghost," he said, flashing that easy smile. "You look like you didn't sleep." Sarah managed a faint smirk. "Didn't feel like it." "Yeah, I get that," he said, glancing at the sky. "Storm like this makes the whole base feel restless." Her stomach turned. He spoke like nothing was wrong, like he hadn't just betrayed everyone here. "Command said you're leading perimeter recon this afternoon," she said, keeping her tone neutral. He nodded. "Yeah, Cole wants a tight rotation. Guess the man doesn't trust anyone these days." "Maybe he's right not to," she replied softly. He looked at her, his grin fatting a little. What's that supposed to mean? She held his gaze. Means maybe some people have been moving things they shouldn't. Silence. The rain fell harder between them. Vega's expression shifted, amusement giving way to something colder. I see, he said slowly, so that's why you're here. Sarah didn't answer. He stepped closer, his voice dropping. He sent you, didn't he, Cole, to feel me out? Her jaw tightened. I came on my own. Don't lie to me, Vega said. The warmth was gone from his voice now, replaced by calculation. He's been sniffing around for weeks. You think I don't notice? Sarah took a step back, her hand unconsciously hovering near her belt. Not threatening, just instinct. Then stop running, she said. Talk to him, explain it. If you're clean, clear your name. Clear my name, he laughed, short, sharp, humorless. You think that's how this works? You think men like Cole want explanations? They want scapegoats. She shook her head. He doesn't want a scapegoat, he wants the truth. Vega's eyes narrowed. And what about you, Lieutenant? You want the truth, or you just want to be seen by your hero again? The words hit harder than she expected. She felt heat rise in her chest, anger, shame, disbelief all tangled together. He smirked. You think I don't see it? The way you look at him, the way you wait for his approval. You're just like the rest, chasing validation in a man who doesn't even believe in it himself. Sarah's voice came low, controlled, dangerous. You crossed a line, Vega. No, he said, stepping closer until his face was inches from hers. I stopped pretending. You should try it sometime. Her hand tightened on the strap of her rifle. Where are the weapons going? She asked. He smiled. You wouldn't understand. Try me. He looked at her for a long time, then shook his head, the smirk returning. You're loyal, Hale, I'll give you that, but loyalty gets people killed. He started to turn away, but she stepped forward, blocking his path. Answer the question. Something flickered in his eyes, something between regret and pride. They're going where they're needed, he said finally, to people who will use them to end wars faster than politicians ever will. That's treason. That's survival, he snapped. You think Cole's a saint. You think all this discipline and silence actually changes anything. You're playing by rules written by people who will never bleed like we do. She stared at him, the rain running down her face like tears she refused to let fall. This isn't about politics, she said softly. This is about betrayal. He leaned closer, his voice a whisper. Then you know what that feels like, don't you? To give everything and still not be seen. She flinched because he was right, because there was truth buried in the poison of his words. But she didn't let it show. I see you now, she said, and I see what you've become. Vega's jaw tightened. He looked away just for a second, maybe out of shame, maybe to remember who he used to be. Then he exhaled, the sound bitter. You shouldn't have come here, Sarah. She didn't move, neither should you. For a long moment, the rain was the only sound between them. Then, faintly, she heard movement behind the trucks, the quiet, calculated steps of boots on wet concrete. Cole's voice came through her earpiece. We've got you in sight, step back. Vega must notice the faint motion of her eyes. His hand went to his holster instantly. Don't, she said, voice sharp. But he didn't listen. The weapon came up fast, too fast. And then came the shot. Not hers. Cole. Vega dropped to one knee, clutching his shoulder, the pistol falling to the ground. Move, Cole shouted, emerging from the shadows with 2 MPs. Sarah rushed forward, disarmed Vega, and pressed her hand against the wound. He winced, eyes wide, shock replacing fury. You shot me, he rasped, looking past her at Cole. Cole's voice was calm. You aimed first. Vega's breathing slowed, blood mixed with rain. You don't understand, it wasn't supposed to go like this. Then tell us, Sarah said, leaning closer. But his eyes were already dimming, not from death, but from realization. He's already inside, he whispered. You're too late. Cole crouched beside him. Who? Vega's lips parted but no words came, just silence. Then his eyes rolled back, and he slumped forward unconscious. Medics rushed in seconds later. Cole ordered a full lockdown on the hangars, but Sarah barely heard the noise around her. Her mind was stuck on two words. He's already inside. Inside where? Inside what? Cole placed a hand on her shoulder, grounding her. You did what you had to do. She looked up at him, rain dripping from her hair, her voice barely a whisper. He was my friend. I know. And you shot him. I saved you. The silence after that felt heavier than any explosion. He didn't flinch under her stare. You can hate me for it later. Right now, we've got a problem. She took a step back, shaking her head. He said someone's already inside. Cole nodded grimly. Then that means this base isn't compromised, it's occupied. Her stomach dropped. By who? That, he said, looking toward the main compound, is what we're about to find out. That night the base's power flickered. Systems went offline one by one. Emergency lights glowed red against the corridors. Sarah stood beside Cole in the command center, watching the screens blink out. It wasn't a glitch, it was a takeover. Whoever Vega was working with, they were already in. Cole turned to her, his voice low, calm, steady as the first night she'd seen him. This isn't training anymore, Lieutenant. Sarah chambered her rifle, eyes sharp. It never was, sir. Outside, thunder rolled. The kind that didn't belong to weather anymore. The alarms never sounded. That was the first sign something was wrong. When a base loses power, protocols activate automatically, backup systems, alerts, security lockdowns. But this time, there was nothing. Just silence. The kind that doesn't protect, the kind that hunts. Lieutenant Sarah Hale gripped her rifle, eyes adjusting to the dim red emergency lights flickering along the corridor walls. The air smelled of metal and static. She could hear faint movement, boots, distant, methodical, not panic, precision. Whoever was here wasn't running. They were moving with purpose. Commander Cole moved ahead of her, his profile carved in crimson light, his voice low, steady. Stay close, eyes open. If they've cut main power, they'll go for comms next. Sarah nodded, sweeping her weapon across each corner before advancing. Every instinct screamed at her that this wasn't random sabotage. This was infiltration. Vega's last words still echoed in her head. He's already inside. Now she understood. They reached the central junction, the hallway splitting toward the command room and the supply wing. Cole paused, scanning the faint glimmer of shattered glass on the floor. Thermal optics, he muttered. They came through the control windows, no breach alarms. How? Sarah whispered. Inside credentials, he replied grimly. Whoever's leading them had access. Sarah's jaw clenched. Then Vega wasn't lying. Cole's eyes met hers, sharp and knowing. No, he was just too late. They moved again, slower now. The emergency lighting flickered, casting long, moving shadows across the walls. Each step was measured, calculated. Somewhere in the distance, a gunshot. One, then silence again. Sarah's heart pounded, but her breathing stayed even. She could hear her own pulse in her ears, the rhythmic beat of adrenaline and control fighting for dominance. They reached the control room. The door was half open, a faint glow spilling from inside. Cole motioned for her to hold. He leaned forward just enough to peek through the gap. One body on the floor, blood still fresh. A second figure stood at the console, typing rapidly. Sarah raised her rifle. Cole held up a hand, wait. He moved first, stepping through the doorway, his voice a low command. Step away from that console. The figure froze, then slowly turned. A young man, uniformed, base insignia, but his eyes, cold, detached, weren't the eyes of a soldier anymore. Cole kept his weapon level. "You're not supposed to be here." The man's lips curved faintly. "Neither are you, Commander." Before Cole could respond, the man hit a key sequence. The console sparked, then went dark. Cole fired one controlled shot. The man fell, a clean hit to the shoulder. Sarah rushed forward, securing the console. The data stream was gone, wiped. Whoever this operative was, he'd just erased the digital trail. Cole knelt beside him, checking the wound. "Who are you working for?" The man laughed weakly through clenched teeth. "Not for you." "Wrong answer," Cole said, pressing harder on the wound. Sarah's gaze flicked to the screens. Most systems were offline, but one still flickered, a partial transmission log. She leaned closer, reading the coordinates before the feed cut entirely. "Cole," she said, "this isn't over. They sent a transmission before power went down." His head snapped up. "Where to?" She hesitated. "Outpost Echo, 3 clicks south of base." He exhaled sharply. "That's an abandoned relay site." "Not anymore," she said quietly. He rose to his feet, pulling the wounded operative upright. "Then that's where we're going." Sarah frowned. "Sir, we don't even know how many." "We'll find out," he cut in, his voice controlled but tense. "If that relay's active, someone's coordinating this from there." She stared at him, part of her wanting to protest, part of her knowing it was pointless. He'd made his decision. And she'd follow. Because she trusted him. Because even now, even through fear and chaos, she believed in that silent respect that started it all. They moved through the darkness toward the motor pool, headlights dimmed, engines off. The rain had turned into a mist that clung to their faces, cold and relentless. Cole drove. Sarah sat beside him, rifle across her lap, eyes scanning the horizon through the cracked windshield. For a long while, neither spoke. The hum of the tires over gravel filled the silence like a heartbeat. Then Cole said quietly, "You did good today." Sarah glanced at him. "You mean not getting shot?" He gave a faint half-smile. "I mean staying steady. Most people panic when the lights go out." "I've had practice," she said softly. He looked at her then, really looked at her, like he could see every sleepless night she'd spent at the range, every wound she never showed. "What drives you, Lieutenant?" he asked suddenly. The question caught her off guard. "Sir." "When no one's watching, when it's just you and the dark, what keeps you moving?" She looked out the window, at the black, rain-soaked fields sliding past. "My brother," she said quietly. "He enlisted before me, didn't make it home." Cole's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "I'm sorry." "He was the best shot I ever knew," she continued. "Used to say the range isn't where you practice hitting targets, it's where you practice staying human." Cole was silent for a moment. He was right. She turned to him. "What about you, sir? What keeps you going?" He thought for a long time before answering. "Mistakes." Sarah frowned. "Sir." He met her eyes. "I've made more than I can count. Men I sent into places they shouldn't have been. Orders that sounded right until they weren't. The uniform doesn't protect you from regret, Hale. It just teaches you how to carry it." The honesty in his tone disarmed her. She'd seen him command rooms, silence crowds, stare down chaos without blinking, but never like this. Never stripped down to the truth. And in that moment, she realized maybe that's what strength really was. Not the absence of fear, but the refusal to let it define you. The vehicle slowed. They approached the outskirts of Outpost Echo, or what used to be. The place was a skeleton of concrete and steel, swallowed by fog and time. Cole killed the engine. "We go in quiet." They moved through the shadows, boots sinking into wet ground. The outpost loomed ahead, windows shattered, antennas bent, but faint light flickered from inside. Sarah raised her rifle. Someone's home. They entered from the west side, moving between collapsed walls. Inside, the air was thick with dust and heat from portable generators. Voices muffled, male, two of them. Cole motioned, she flanked right, he left. They moved silently, a dance of experience and instinct. Then she saw them, two operatives hunched over a crate marked with military insignia. Weapons, communications gear, encryption drives. This wasn't an infiltration, it was an extraction. She lifted her rifle. Cole's voice came low through the comm. On my mark. Copy. 3-2. A third voice cut in from behind. You're late. Sarah spun around, weapon raised, but froze. Standing in the doorway was Major Keene, the base's operations chief. Stand down, Lieutenant, he said calmly. You don't know what you're doing. Cole stepped out of the shadows, eyes narrowing. Keene. Commander, Keene said, his tone almost casual. You're not cleared for this facility. Cole's jaw tightened. You've been running this. I've been managing it, Keene replied smoothly. The shipments, the diversions, all of it sanctioned, just not public. Sarah's voice came sharp. Sanctioned by who? Keene smiled faintly. By the people who understand that wars aren't won by rules. You should know that, Commander. Cole stepped closer, and Vega. Keene's expression didn't change. Collateral. He knew enough to be useful, not enough to survive. Sarah felt her stomach turn. You killed him. Correction, Keene said. You led him to us, you just didn't know it. Cole's hand twitched near his sidearm. You're a disgrace to that uniform. Keene's smirk widened. Says the man who's been burying classified reports for years. Sarah glanced at Cole, but his eyes didn't move. He didn't react, didn't deny. Sir, she whispered. Cole's voice was steady but colder now. He's lying. Am I? Keene asked. You've seen the files, Lieutenant, the ones he never sends up the chain. You think your hero's clean. Sarah felt something shift, a flash of doubt she didn't want. But there was no time for questions. Keene raised his weapon. Cole moved faster. 2 shots. One hit the wall beside Sarah. The other, Cole's, hit Keene square in the chest. The other operatives reached for their rifles, but Sarah dropped them both before they could aim. 2 clean shots, 2 lives ended in silence. The room filled with smoke and ringing, and the smell of burnt metal. When it was over, Cole stood still, his gun still raised. Sarah approached Keene's fallen body. The man's hand twitched once, then went still. It was done. Cole lowered his weapon slowly, his breath steady. He was bluffing, he said. Sarah looked at him, really looked, and saw something in his eyes she hadn't seen before. Not guilt. Not pride. Just wait. She wanted to believe him. She did believe him. But part of her still heard Keene's voice echoing. You think your hero's clean. Sir, she said quietly, if he was bluffing, why did you shoot first? Cole didn't answer. Outside, thunder rolled again, closer this time. And for the first time since she'd met him, Sarah felt something she never thought she'd feel toward Commander Cole. Doubt. They left the outpost just before dawn. The rain had stopped. The horizon was bruised in shades of blue and ash. Sarah rode in silence, her rifle across her knees, eyes distant. Cole drove without looking at her. The only sound was the hum of the engine and the wind pushing against the frame. Neither spoke, because sometimes silence said too much. The drive back to base felt longer than the war she'd been trained for. The tires hummed against the wet road, headlights carving thin paths through the fog. Neither of them spoke, not once. Commander Cole kept his eyes on the horizon, the same horizon he'd always faced. Straight, unflinching, unreadable. Sarah Hale sat beside him, her rifle across her knees, her heart pounding in quiet rhythm to the hum of the engine. She couldn't shake the sound of that gunshot. Not the one that killed Keene, but the moment before it. The fraction of hesitation that wasn't hesitation at all, it was choice. Cole hadn't waited to question him. He'd pulled the trigger like a man, who already knew what needed to be buried. And that scared her more than the bullet itself. When they finally reached the base, the dawn light had turned everything pale and unreal, like the world had forgotten to wake up. Cole parked near the main control post and turned off the ignition. The silence that followed felt heavier than the rain had hours before. He didn't look at her when he spoke. "Write your report. Nothing leaves your desk until I clear it." She turned toward him, searching for something human in his tone. "Sir, with respect, the report won't mean anything if you won't let command see it." His jaw tightened. "That's not your concern." "It is if the base is compromised," she snapped, louder than she meant to. "Sir, you said we're fighting corruption, not hiding it." He finally turned his head, his eyes sharp, cold, and weary. "Careful, Lieutenant." She froze, his voice low and heavy, the kind that didn't threaten, it warned. He exhaled, softer now. "You don't know everything yet." "Then tell me," she said, almost pleading. "Tell me what Keene meant. Tell me why you shot him before he could speak." He leaned back, hands resting on the steering wheel. "Because I've seen what happens when you give a traitor time to talk. They use it to destroy the people who still believe in something." Sarah stared at him, the words sinking like stones into her chest. He stepped out of the vehicle without waiting for her reply. The door closed with a dull thud, final, absolute. And just like that, the man who once saluted her in quiet respect was walking away in silence she didn't understand anymore. That night she couldn't sit still. Her report sat untouched on the desk. Every time she tried to write, the words tangled with questions she couldn't answer. What if Keene was telling the truth? What if Cole really was burying things? She tried to shake it off, tried to remember the man who'd told her, "Don't mistake punishment for discipline." The man who'd believed in her when no one else noticed. But every memory felt cracked now, pieces of something she couldn't fit back together. At 2300 hours she left her quarters. The corridor was quiet, the hum of generators faint but steady again. Power had been restored, systems were back online. She moved toward the restricted records room. No guards, no cameras on this wing since the lockdown, Cole's doing. She swiped her clearance card. Her heart raced. She hesitated only a moment before pulling out a secondary card Vega had once given her, just in case. She didn't know why she'd kept it all this time. Access granted. The door clicked open. Inside, the air was cold, the kind of cold that held secrets. She found the mission archives Cole had sealed under classified lock. Operation Morning Glass. Operation Silent Rift. And then one file unmarked, newer than the rest. She opened it. Images, reports, a debrief dated 6 months ago. Commander Cole, mission lead. Objective: containment of friendly fire incident, suppression of field evidence. Her throat tightened as she scrolled further. The file included a casualty list, dozens of names. Among them, Captain Vega. Her pulse stopped. Vega's name listed dead months before he ever joined her unit. She stared, disbelief freezing her in place. Either the file was wrong, or the man she'd trained beside wasn't who he said he was. And Cole had known. She didn't realize she was shaking until her fingers brushed the edge of the desk. The file flickered as the system timed out, returning to the security screen. Behind her, footsteps. Looking for something. Sarah turned, heart slamming against her ribs. Cole stood in the doorway, half in shadow, half in red light. Her voice was low, steady. "You knew." He didn't move. "What did you find?" "You knew Vega was Vega," she said, her voice trembling now. "You knew he was already dead." His silence said everything she didn't want to believe. "Who was he?" she demanded. Cole stepped closer. "A ghost. A cover identity used to infiltrate an intelligence leak months before you arrived. We knew someone was rerouting arms. Vega's name gave us an entry point. Then why didn't you tell me? Because you were part of the test. Her stomach dropped. The test. He nodded slowly. We needed someone inside the unit who didn't know the setup, someone genuine, someone the imposter wouldn't suspect. Your discipline made you the perfect variable. Sarah's mouth went dry. You used me. Cole's jaw tightened. I trusted you. You lied to me. He didn't deny it, and you're alive because of it. She took a step back. You could told me the truth. And what then? He asked sharply. You would second-guess every move, every conversation. You would changed and he would seen it. She stared at him, eyes burning. You turned me into bait. He exhaled, his voice quiet now, regret hidden beneath the gravel. I turned you into what you already were, Lieutenant, a soldier who doesn't break. The room felt smaller suddenly, the air too heavy, too close. She wanted to scream, to hit him, to make him feel the fracture he'd left inside her. But all she could do was whisper, You think this is strength, manipulating the people who trust you. Cole's gaze softened just slightly. No, I think it's survival. She shook her head, tears finally spilling over. Then maybe survival isn't worth it. He stepped closer, his voice barely audible. You think I don't live with it? Every lie, every mission, I carry it. You think I don't see what it does to people like you? His tone broke for the first time, not loud, not angry, just human. You reminded me why I started doing this, he said quietly. Because I used to believe in soldiers who trained when no one was watching, soldiers who still had something pure left inside them. She met his eyes, the man who had once saluted her out of respect, who now stood before her as both savior and betrayer. And she didn't know which one hurt more. The sound of gunfire shattered the moment. Automatic rounds close, coming from the south corridor. Cole turned instantly, his voice switching from human to command. They're inside the perimeter again. Sarah grabbed her rifle. How? The base was secure. Not anymore, he said. You think they came for the weapons. They came for the data you just opened. Her blood went cold. The files. Exactly. They sprinted through the corridor, the red lights pulsing against the walls. The air was thick with smoke and panic, shouts, orders, chaos blending into the rhythm of war. When they reached the southern wing, the door was half blown open. 2 guards were down. Beyond them, shadows moving fast, coordinated. Cole took cover behind a column. We hold them here. Sarah dropped beside him, checked her magazine. How many? Too many. He glanced at her, his voice calm despite the storm. You still trust me? She hesitated, meeting his eyes. I don't know. Good, he said. Means you're thinking, now focus. They opened fire. Controlled bursts. Each shot deliberate, clean. Sarah's breathing synced with the recoil, the rhythm she'd learned alone on the range, now brought to life under fire. Her aim was flawless. Every round hit center mass. Cole's cover fire pinned the rest behind crates and vehicles. But they were advancing, and fast. Reload, Cole shouted. She swapped mags, tossed him one. Left flanks pushing. I see it. He moved to cover her, and that's when the explosion hit, a flash grenade, concussive, deafening. Sarah hit the ground hard, ears ringing, vision swimming. Through the haze, she saw Cole stagger, blood streaking down his temple. Sorry. He waved her off. I'm fine, move. She pushed herself up, fighting disorientation, firing at the shadows through the smoke. One fell, then another. And then silence. When the smoke cleared, the intruders were gone. Only bodies and debris remained. Sarah leaned against the wall, breathing hard, her ears still ringing. Cole sat down beside her, wiping blood from his forehead. He gave a faint, tired smile. You shoot like you breathe. She almost laughed, almost. Instead, she said softly, you still think this is survival. He looked at her, eyes softer now, voice a whisper meant only for her. This is redemption. She didn't answer, couldn't, because she finally understood. The man who'd saluted her in the dusk wasn't saluting perfection. He was saluting the part of her that hadn't broken yet. And maybe he was trying to remember what that felt like himself. The power flickered again briefly, then darkness. Cole stood reloading. It's not over. Sarah followed, her hand steady once more. Then let's finish it. They moved together into the dark. Two soldiers. One broken truth. One last mission. And in the silence between footsteps, a thought lingered in her mind like a heartbeat she couldn't stop hearing. Sometimes respect isn't earned by rank. It's earned by the choices that haunt you. The storm had returned. Thunder rolled above the base like distant artillery, and the rain came down in sheets, pounding against steel, washing blood from the concrete. Sirens flickered weakly, power lines crackled, and smoke still hung in the corridors like ghosts unwilling to leave. Sarah Hale and Commander Cole moved through the wreckage in silence, their boots crunching over shattered glass and spent casings. Neither spoke, there was nothing left to say. Half the base was gone. Communications down. Generators failing. And somewhere beneath the chaos, the enemy that had orchestrated all of it was still moving. Cole's voice came low through the dark. Server room below the hangar. That's where the last signal came from. Sarah nodded, rifle steady. Then that's where this ends. They descended the narrow stairwell into darkness. The air grew colder, heavier. Emergency lights pulsed red like a heartbeat deep underground. Every step echoed, the rhythm of discipline carrying them through ruin. When they reached the lower level, the sound of typing drifted from the distance, calm, deliberate keystrokes amid destruction. They followed it. At the end of the hall, the door to the data room stood open. Inside, a single figure. Not a soldier. A man in civilian clothes, soaked and pale under the light of a dozen flickering screens. He turned slowly when they entered, his face tired, unafraid. "Commander Cole," he said, "I wondered how long it would take you." Sarah recognized him instantly. Dr. Merck, the systems analyst assigned months ago to optimize logistics across bases. Quiet, polite, invisible. Cole's voice hardened. "You were never optimizing anything." Smiled faintly. "No, I was correcting what you broke. By arming black market cells. By giving weapons to people who still have something to fight for," replied. "You buried truth under protocol. You silenced reports. You called it discipline." Sarah's stomach twisted. "You caused this. You killed our soldiers." His eyes flicked to her. "And you still believe you're the hero here, Lieutenant. He's been lying to you since day one. Ask him about Morning Glass." She froze. The name hit like a bullet she'd been waiting for. Cole's voice came firm. "That operation is classified." "Of course it is," said softly. "Because it was you. Friendly fire cover-up, wasn't it? Dozens dead. Orders came from you, Commander, but you couldn't live with it, could you? So you built this crusade, a way to atone by hunting men like me." Sarah turned toward Cole. "Sir, tell me he's lying." Cole's jaw clenched. Rainwater dripped from his sleeve, mixing with blood. He didn't answer. "Tell me," she demanded. Finally he said it, quiet, simple. "He's not lying." The words hit harder than any explosion. Sarah stepped back, disbelief flooding through her. All the pieces, the secrecy, the mission file, the quick trigger on Keen, it all fit now. Smile was almost kind. "He's not your hero, Lieutenant. He's a man trying to drown his guilt with yours." Cole's weapon rose. "Enough." But didn't flinch. "You can kill me, you'll still wake up tomorrow the same man. Empty, broken." The thunder outside cracked, so loud it shook dust from the ceiling. For a moment, Sarah thought he would shoot. Then Cole lowered his weapon slightly, voice gravel-soft. You think I don't know what I've become. I live with it every day. But men like you make excuses. You call destruction mercy. Stepped forward, eyes bright with conviction. And you call silence honor. That was when Sarah saw it, the small detonator in his hand, thumb resting on the switch. "Stop," she shouted. But his voice was calm. "This base dies with its secrets. Maybe that's justice." Cole lunged. The blast lit the hallway white. The shockwave hurled Sarah backward, metal shards slicing her arm as the world folded into fire and sound. When her hearing came back, everything was a dull roar, flames, falling debris, alarms screaming somewhere far away. She coughed, dragging herself upright through smoke. "Commander!" Through the haze she saw him, Cole, half buried beneath twisted steel, blood soaking his sleeve, eyes open, barely conscious. She ran to him, heart hammering. "Stay with me, sir." He managed a faint smile, always the last one standing, huh? She tried to lift the beam, pinning his leg, straining until her muscles burned. It wouldn't move. "Don't," he rasped. "You'll waste time, systems gone, whole L collapse." "I'm not leaving you." He reached up, his hand gripping hers, strong, steady, the same hand that had saluted her once upon a quiet evening. "Listen to me," he said. "There's an external drive in my jacket. It's the evidence, everything, morning glass. The supply leaks. Get it out." She shook her head, tears cutting through the soot on her cheeks. "We can both go." "Sarah." Her name said with a weight that stopped her heart. "Don't make my mistake. Don't stay behind because of guilt." The ceiling groaned. The heat was rising fast. She grabbed his collar, desperate. "You can't ask me to leave you." He gave a weak chuckle. "I'm not asking, I'm giving an order." Her breath caught. She wanted to argue, to refuse. But the look in his eyes, calm, unflinching, told her there was no winning this one. He squeezed her hand once more. "You earned that salute. Don't let this take it away." For a second, everything around them disappeared. The fire, the alarms, the war. Just two soldiers in silence again. Then she nodded, voice breaking. "Yes, sir." She took the drive, slipped it into her vest, and stood. He looked up at her, eyes soft even through pain. "Tell them the truth." And before she turned to leave, she said quietly, "I will." She ran. Through collapsing corridors, through smoke and flame, lungs burning, legs screaming. The emergency exit was half blocked, but she pushed through, stumbling into the cold night rain. The sky opened above her, thunder rolling like the sound of distant memory. Behind her, the base erupted, a final burst of orange light tearing into the sky. She fell to her knees in the mud, gasping, the flash reflecting in her eyes. It was over. The man who had taught her discipline, who had believed in her silence, who had carried his sins like armor, was gone. But in his place, he left something else. Proof. And a purpose. Days later, Sarah sat in a small briefing room miles from the ruin. Bandaged arm, hollow eyes, the external drive lay on the table between her and the investigators. They asked questions, too many. She answered every one, calm, clear, precise. No one spoke when she finished. There was no applause. No vindication. Just quiet acknowledgement, the kind she understood best. When she walked out, the sun was setting, that same red-gold glow she remembered from the range so long ago. She stopped near the training field. The targets had been replaced. The air smelled of gun oil and dust. She stood there for a long moment, staring down the lanes, remembering his voice. Discipline isn't built when someone's watching. It's built when you're alone. She raised her rifle, took her stance. Steady breath. Steady hands. Crack. The shot echoed clean through the evening air. She reloaded, fired again. Each bullet a memory. Each recoil a heartbeat. And somewhere in the silence that followed, she could almost feel him again, standing at the far end of the range, watching, saying nothing. She lowered her weapon, the wind brushing across her face. Sometimes, she thought, heroes aren't the ones who live without guilt. They're the ones who face it. That night she wrote one final note in her journal, a message she'd never send but couldn't leave unwritten. You were right, Commander. Perfection is an illusion. But maybe redemption is. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts. She closed the book, exhaled slowly, and let the silence settle around her like peace. Outside, the rain began again, soft, steady, endless, washing away the smoke, the blood, and everything that had come before.